Sony was a company that had great innovation and ideas. They brought us devices such as the Vitamagic, which coupled a Betamax player with a Indexitron projector, but they also had the Beta Theatre. Let's check it out. So what we have here is a rather rare Sony Betamax. This is called an SLHFT7. What makes this one a little different than most, it's the home theater edition. What exactly was the home theater edition? The home theater edition had a built-in amplifier. Basically, just add speakers left and right. Had I think it was 30 watts per channel was the power amplifier that was built in. But this was made at a time when people didn't have stereo systems connected to their televisions. So it allowed the owner to just put a pair of speakers onto their Beta machine, and it would give them all the benefits of a high power amplifier to play their music videos on their Beta tapes. If I remember correctly, this unit was essentially an SLHF400 with the addition of the amplifier. And there it is. 711 chassis. I haven't plugged this in yet, so I don't know what it's doing. Looks like the cassette basket is in the down position. So we'll take a look at this and see what is up, why it's in the loaded position. Is it the front loader is broken? I'm curious. It could be the gears in here. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe one of the gears is broken. Okay, before I take this thing out and cause any damage, we're going to pull the front loader apart and see whether it's broken gears or whether it's just out of adjustment. First things first, we'll release the front panel so that I can remove the cassette housing. We don't need to take the front panel off completely, just clear it enough so that I can remove the screws. There's 2 screws here and 2 screws back there that hold the front loader on. Got to get in there with a smaller screwdriver, because with the basket down like this, it's a little tough to get in there to undo that screw. One of the first things you notice on this unit is it has 2 power transformers. One power supply for the VCR section. The second power supply, the one at the back, is for the amplifier section. 2 separate power supplies, 2 power rectifiers, 2 sets of filters. Got to remove this top so I can remove the toothed belt, and now the front loader should lift up. And out. There is a switch that plugs in. I can either remove the switch or unplug it. We'll just remove the switch from the side here. Just like that. Leave the switch in place. Now we can take a look at this and see if there's any broken gears. Hopefully there's not, because the chances of finding these nylon gears now would be fairly difficult. I actually do have a complete front loader. Complete. For one of these machines in a wrecker, but I was keeping it for my own use. It's held together with tabs on the side here. I guess depending on how bad the guy that owns this wants it fixed, whether he'll be able to convince me to sell him mine if it's necessary. But we don't even know if there's any other fault with this machine at this point in time. And we may be looking at multiple problems. Because the cassette basket is out of alignment, I want to take the top piece off just so I can remove the basket and give it a full inspection for any broken parts that there might be. There's 2 clips on here that just have to be pushed out of the way, and then the top bracket will lift off. Now this machine, there's actually nothing real special about it. It's just a run-of-the-mill 2-head beta or super beta hi-fi machine. But what does make it unique is that amplifier. That makes this machine quite rare because they were much more expensive than, say, the SLHF400. And because of that, they didn't sell nearly as well. So there's not a lot of these machines that were out there. You gotta be really careful with this plastic. It's really brittle, so you gotta be really careful when trying to open these things up because this plastic is just waiting to break. It's gone all yellow because of the age of it, but it comes apart like that. And now I'm going to look to see if I see any broken gears, which sometimes happened on these units. Looks like there's an alignment problem. Oh, this gear's broken right there. There's our fault. Damn. This gear's broken. So unless I can find another one of these gears for this unit, I'm going to be SOL, as they say. Because even if I do time the mechanism, the 2 pieces are out of alignment. Even if I do time them, which I could. It's just going to get out of alignment again. Okay, that piece is lined up there. Let's remove that. There are timing marks on these gears, right? But you can see that this tooth is bust off right there. That tooth is broken. And that's what happened on this. This part looks okay.
Okay, now the cassette basket will drop. And the cassette basket will go back up correctly, but let's say this, with this tooth broken off of here, I think that's going to be an issue. There are timing marks on these gears. We adjust them to their unloaded position. Holes line up with the holes in the plastic below. Here's the problem with this broken gear. The cog that's broken is the cog that operates the control arm that goes to the other side. So with that cog broken like this, it allows the side to get out of alignment. You see? So that's why it won't, if we don't replace that gear, this is not going to work. Now, I might have another machine. I'm trying to think whether I have another beta machine which has got a front loader that's any good, that piece could be taken off of. I do have a few old beta machines, and I might have one that's got the same mechanism. We'll have to take a look and see. So in my pile of junk, I have I had an SLHFT7 which was the hi-fi ready machine, but I'd already robbed the STK5441, I think that was the module, out of it to fix an SLHF1000, and it has a complete mechanism. I don't know whether this mechanism is exactly the same as the other one. Maybe it is. Maybe it can swap directly over. I think it is, with the addition of just this little bit longer bracket. I think everything else is the same. So if the top piece is swapped from one to the other, the unit will be compatible, I think. And I could do that. I could just swap this whole mechanism, or I could pull it apart and change the gear. But you see, this one's a little different design, because this one here has screws in the side that hold it down, whereas this one here, it was just clipped in place. And well, Sony figured out that the ones that clipped together were the ones that were problematic, because that's usually what caused them to strip, was the clips would pop apart and cause the gears to strip. So they went to a screwed down design where screws went in through here and through here to hold this unit together. This one here is a screwed on side, but I think the gears are the same in these ones. But since I already have one that is complete, I may be further ahead just to swap this entire front loader over from one machine to the other and be done with it. That might make the most sense. There. I think that should do it. I guess I should have plugged this in before even getting this far into it, because, well, this unit is totally dead. There's no power, there's no display, the clock doesn't light up, so it's got more problems than just the front loader. So I've got no power getting to the unit itself. I hope it's not the STK5441 down here, because that part is not available. I've got DC going through the fuses. If we look on Mr. Meter, so we know the transformer's working. I have 14.4 volts on both sides of that fuse, and on this fuse here I have 20 volts, so both fuses are good. We're going to pull the power board out and just take a look and see if there's any connections on here, and then we can check the inputs and outputs on the SDK regulator. Fingers crossed it's not shot. 3 or 4 screws to remove in this whole board. Should lift out. Gotta lift out this shield first, and then I should be able to lift this out. There might be another screw or two holding this in place. Yeah, the screws that hold down the regulator IC have to come undone, and then this whole board will lift up. I can unplug it so I can inspect it. No heatsink compound. No wonder these things all failed. I wonder if that R2 is open. That's a resistor fuse. Nope, that's okay. If we look down on the regulator here, I'll notice all these cracked connections. So that may be the problem, but it may also be this regulator that's bad. If we look at the fuses that has power, right? We have, here's our fuses here, right? We have our 20 volt supply, which goes through this filter, right? Because our bridge rectifier is over here. Here's our transformer. We have our 2 bridge rectifiers, right? Negative going to ground, and then the one positive here goes through this fuse. And if we follow this fuse down, it goes right into the regulator IC. And if we follow the other fuse down, it comes across here, and also goes into that regulator IC. So we've got voltage going into the IC, but I've got nothing on any of the plugs coming out. And as you can see, they're all fed off of that IC. This IC does both regulation and switching. Usually what happens when this fails is the clock display will light up, and when you push the power button, the power indicator will come on, but the solenoid won't clunk and the machine won't turn on because one of the switch supplies is inside here. But if one of the always on supplies were to go dead, then you'd have nothing. And it's more than likely either one of these connections is bad, that's what we're hoping, or it's the IC itself that's gone. And if it's the IC itself that's gone, I don't hold my hopes up too high that one will be obtainable, because I already robbed that same IC out of the machine that this front loader just came out of to fix my SLHF7 and that was done probably 20 years ago when the IC popped and it was not available. So I sacrificed an SLHFR50 that was given to me to fix up one of my HF1000s. And then the other HF1000, the head failed on it, so I pulled the head out of my HF, or the drum seized. So I pulled the drum out of my HF900 to fix the other 1000. So I'll just let the soldering iron heat up a bit. We'll go over all these connections here and then try this again. But as you can see, there was no heatsink compound put on at the factory. None, zero, like it's dry. And they wondered why these things failed. But then remember, The Japanese made the best electronics. Chinese electronics were junk. The Japanese made the best electronics. Yet they had mess ups as big as anybody else's, and this machine would not have been a cheap machine when it was new. So hopefully it's just connections. They all look pretty bad. At least from my point of view here. They all look pretty bad. Thing is, I'll know right away if it is this, because as soon as I put the plugs back in, if this thing turns on, then we'll know that that's what the problem was. And hopefully, if that's what the problem was, that's all that's wrong with this. It's the front loader and some bad solder. Now check out these plugs too, because the plugs themselves are always trouble spots. This is the switched input right here, and then there's AC that goes for the clock display. Ground and 12 volts and ground. I tell you, I was sicker than a dog today. Last night after work I came home and I was just feeling like absolute crap. I was concerned I had come down with the COVID, but I'm not. I'm good. I was tested and it was negative. Looks more like I got myself a case of food poisoning. But man, oh man, oh man, did I feel like absolute crap last night. Okay, that capacitor had a bit of a charge in it. I just saw a little spark there. Put a couple screws in here, then put the plugs in and see what happens. Okay, just enough screws in it to hold it together temporarily. I'll power it up and see if the clock lights up. If the clock display comes on, I've made progress, and I still don't have a clock display, nor any power. We'll see if there's any voltage on any of those output pins that are marked like constant 12, for example. So this one should have 12 volts on it, and it has nothing. That one should have 45, but maybe only when it's on. And voltage going in. Just take a look at all the different voltages on the different pins here, because we should have some constant voltages, and if there's no constant voltages coming out of this thing, then it's not going to turn on. Hey, nothing. Zippo. For testing, I'll just kind of prop the board up, because I won't be obviously not going to turn on it. Looks like the IC is toast anyway. Now we can get all the different pins and we can measure what's going in and what should be coming out. So that should be an output there, that one, as should this one. I got 0 on both of those. Inputs, okay, so our input here from one side goes into here. This is an input, there'll be voltage on here, which there is. And this other one here goes in next to it, which is this one here, 20 volts. This is also an input here, 14 volts. And that's an input there, or is that, that's, what is that one? 20 volts, where was I here? 1.5. Yeah, that should be like a 5.5 volt output. That's a 5.5 volt. See, there's nothing there. That's why the clock doesn't light up. It's only got 1 volt on it coming off of this one here. Now there is a Zener diode on here, but unless that Zener diode is shot. Now, our 5 volt supply was low as well. It is possible that that Zener diode might be a problem. So let's just try taking out that Zener and see whether we get our 5 volt supply back, because we'll take it out and check it, because I forgot about that. If the 5 volt supply isn't there, it could shut the entire thing down. Or if the Zener was shorted, it could shut the whole system down. So let's just try removing this Zener diode, just for the hell of things. It certainly would not be the first time that I've seen Zener diodes go bad and cause everything to shut down. Let's get the board out of here. Okay, let's just check this Zener and see if it's shorted. It's working that way. How about this way? Well, it shows that it measures, like it doesn't measure it's shorted. We can check that the Zener is working by our little test jig. So how we make up a test jig, I know I've shown you guys this before in the past, but how we make up a test jig is we'll just put a resistor in series with the Zener, positive on the cathode side going through a resistor, negative to the anode side, and we put a higher than the breakover voltage. In this case I've got it, my power supply set at 7 volts, and then if I measure right to the power supply side, you'll see that I've got 7.8 volts, but if I measure the other side, 5.7. So we know that this Zener is a 5.7 volt Zener, and it is working. You see I'm measuring here to the Zener side and to the input side. That's how we test the Zener diode. Doesn't matter how high I take this power supply. I can take this power supply, you know, up to 9 volts or 12 volts or whatever. The output is going to remain at 5.8 volts. That's how we know the Zener is working. So there's nothing wrong with the Zener diode on this unit. Therefore, the fault is, I think, is still going to be the regulator here. But we'll put it back in, just look and see if possibly there's anything else that's loading that 5 volt supply down. So I just mounted the board back in. I put the Zener back in because it's testing good. I plug it in and I have 5.5 volts. What the hell? Either that Zener was flaky or there was some crud on the board that was shorting it out. Of course, my other voltages won't be there, but I just noticed something that is a little different, and that's that the clock display is on now. I wonder if it'll work. That's a good sign. It's turning on. The regulator is okay. Huh, weird. Either the Zener wasn't working, but now it is, or there was just some crap on the board, and when I took the Zener out to put it on a resistor and measure it, I cleaned it off. Maybe there was just some crap on the board that was shorting that Zener out and pulling that 5 volt supply down. And with the 5 volt reference down to nothing, the regulator wouldn't power up. Because you see, it gets its the 5 volt output from pin 1. There's the standby output, which is clamped to 5.5 volts by that Zener before feeding it to the standby supply. So if that supply was pulled low, it would kill everything. Let's hook up some speakers and a TV and see if this thing works. I'm going to hook up speakers to the amplifier on this directly. Of course, before I do that, I'm going to throw some heatsink compound on that IC on the bottom. Just a little bit, just enough to keep it cool. So let's do that. Well, I've still got a problem with this. I get sound, but I got no picture, either through the video or through the tape playback or from the tuner. So there's no video out going out the output, so we have another problem. Also, it's not loading the tape correctly. Might be an alignment problem on this mechanism. I'll have to double check it, because when I push the tape in, normally you should be able to push it in, it would spring a bit and it would activate the switch. In this case, I actually have to, now it'll load. So this is still a work in progress, but hey, at least we've got the thing to power up. I can play the sound off of a tape, but I've got no picture. But let's get the loading part working properly now. I'm a little more confident now that we'll get this thing operational, and this might become a multi-part video. In fact, I think it probably will become a multi-part video. But let's we'll push on here. Pull the front loading mechanism out again and just double check the timing of the mechanism itself to see why it's not working, why it's not loading the tape. It's going to be the timing of the gears for sure. That's where the fault is going to be. So we'll get that part taken care of, and then we'll look into the no video problem from the video output terminal. I haven't checked to see if there's RF out. Just the video out I've tried, and there's nothing. So we'll start again. We'll pull this mechanism out and at least get this part going for now. So when the tape gets pushed in, there should be some give on here, and there's not. And it's going to be this gear here in the middle, I think, is not set properly. So let's just open this mechanism up and see what's wrong. Okay, so this is the gear that was broken off the other one, but there should be slack on this gear, and there's not. So we'll just pull it and see why. Might have been this one that was off a bit, but let's just double check. Okay, that one's lining up with the hole, so when it's pushed in, it will turn. It might have been this gear here. This timing mark might not be lined up with that hole. So we'll just put this one back on, make sure it's lined up with the hole, and when I push the mechanism, it should, although it's not, still not giving me much slack. What the heck is wrong here? Is this gear cracked too? I don't think so. Somehow I don't think that was lined up properly. It should be like this. Should be like that, so that this will push in, you see? So that wasn't set right. But it does not line up with that hole. That hole is over here. If that was pushed back to here where that alignment hole is, that's way off. That is way off. It should be right here. It should be all the way back like that, so that this bottom half of this gear is not meshing up with the green portion, so that when you push the tape in, it compresses the spring. You see? If this is turned where this hole lines up with this chassis hole, then this tooth portion of the gear, because this is a split gear, this tooth portion is making contact with the green teeth so that the gear can't turn. When it's ejected, it's got to be over top of that. And when it's over top of that, this piece here should be touching up against here, or damn close to it, like that, so that when the tape goes in, it can push in and allow the switch to activate. That looks a bit better. Just put this back together again and try this and see whether it works.
I think I'm still off by about one tooth on the midway gear, but it should still operate properly as it's going together now.
Okay, let's just do this thing through the motions. eject. Just like that. Reattach the switch on the side. Okay, that part works. Now, we need to figure out why the video doesn't work.
But that's going to have to wait for another part because we've gone on far too long. We'll catch you in part 2. Bye for now.